Good morning, Bucknutters. Welcome to the Bucknuts Morning 5 here on Wednesday, September 4th, 2024. I am Dave Biddle. I'll be joined by Matt Baxendell in just a moment. Bax and I are going to get into the biggest storylines for the Buckeyes as they head into week 2 of their season, second game of the season this Saturday at home, 7:30 p.m. against Western Michigan. Western Michigan gave Wisconsin a really good game in Madison last week. So, they'll be a step up from Akron for sure. They were picked as one of the top 4 teams in the MAC this year. The Western Michigan Broncos were, whereas Akron was picked as one of the worst teams. So we're going to get into that. We're also going to take a look around the Big Ten. How does the Big Ten look so far? We're going to look ahead to some of the games this weekend. Oh, you keep looking at this Michigan-Texas line. It keeps moving the wrong way if you're a Wolverine. It's opened at 5, then it was 5.5, then it was Texas favored by 6.5, and I checked just before the show. It's now Texas favored by 7.5 in Ann Arbor. All right, before we get to all of that good stuff, I want to let you guys know about Factor Meals. Factor, love them because it tastes great. It's ready in 2 minutes. It's high quality. There's no cleaning up. No prep, no cleaning up. High quality, tastes great, ready in 2 minutes. That's like a lot of stuff to like right there. With 35 different meals and more than 60 add-ons to choose from every week, you'll always have new flavors to explore. You can treat yourself to restaurant-quality meals that feature premium ingredients like filet mignon, shrimp, and blackened salmon. Keep kitchen time to a minimum. Factor meals are ready in 2 minutes, like I said. No shopping, no prepping, cooking, or cleaning up. Head to factormeals.com/Bucknuts50 and use code Bucknuts50 to get 50% off your first box plus 20% off your next month. That's code Bucknuts50 at factormeals.com/Bucknuts50 to get 50% off your first box plus 20% off your next month while your subscription is active. It's a great deal, 50% off. I'd throw some smoothies in there too. Their smoothies are really good. So, all right. Still waiting on Bax. So we're just going to get right into it. Some of the high points. We got a chance to talk with Will Howard again yesterday, which is going to be a staple of Tuesday press conferences. We're going to get Ryan Day, of course, every Tuesday. And then one of the coordinators, either Jim Knowles or Chip Kelly. Yesterday was Chip Kelly. And then most weeks we're told we're going to get Will Howard. He's so impressive. All right, let's bring in Bax. Good to see you, my friend. Welcome into the show.
Good morning, Mr. Biddle. How are we doing this fine Wednesday morning?
Doing great. I love that we're in the midst of the season and we just have Ohio State football to talk about. Before we get to going around the Big Ten, just want to get into some of the bigger storylines heading into week 2 for the Buckeyes. Let's start with Will Howard. Just your impressions of how he looked in his Buckeye debut and just how he carries himself as a leader, like yesterday at the press conference.
Yeah, I've been pretty impressed with him so far. I know there was a lot of chatter of, oh man, look how good Cam Ward looked for Miami. Maybe we got the wrong transfer quarterback. I don't think that's the case. I think that Will Howard is an excellent fit here at Ohio State. I thought a lot of his pass, I think he made one play the entire game that I wasn't thrilled with, which was that kind of poor decision to try to throw it back to Trevion Henderson when he was taking a sack, just eat the ball there. But a number of other plays he made were well-thrown balls that for whatever reason weren't completed. His decision-making was good. I honestly thought that he looked like he could be a real running threat in the vein of he's more of a JT Barrett kind of runner than he is a Braxton or a Justin Fields, but there's going to be a running element with him in the game, which is, something I think we've certainly been lacking. I just thought across the board, Will Howard looked like he's the right guy at the right time at quarterback for Ohio State.
I agree. I just like everything about him. And yeah, I think it's one of those. Did Miami get a great transfer quarterback? Yes, they did. Cam Ward looks really good. Is Will Howard exactly what Ohio State needs, in my opinion? Yes, he looks really good. So I think both programs are happy. If you're Florida State, you're probably not happy with your transfer quarterback. If you're Michigan, you're probably not happy with whatever the hell's going on at quarterback for them, starting a former walk-on.
Oh, good Lord, they were bad.
Goodness, I mean, not that I'm mad.
I know we don't have a gambling corner here, Dave, but put whatever you can on Texas, people. Good Lord, that's going to be one-sided.
And you better do it quickly because every time I look, it's Texas is favored more and more and more and more. But by the time it's kickoff, it's going to be like 14 points or something. No, probably not that. But man, and I love that that's a noon kick, high noon. Get to watch Michigan, Texas. a little break in the action. Oh, there's plenty of football. And then the Buckeyes at 7:30. Not crazy about the Buckeyes being a night game this week, but what are you going to do? All right. Next guy on my list, we already have somebody talking about it in the chat. The next guy on my list, Cam will like this on YouTube, is Arvell Reese. We got to talk about Arvell Reese. I mean, he looks like – it was one of those – they said in the spring, people that I trust are like, hey, keep an eye on him. Probably will be a developmental year, but keep an eye on Arvell Reese. No developmental year. He looks ready to roll backs.
So there was a lot of people that were kind of down on CJ Hicks in that game, and I actually thought he played perfectly fine. But I think a lot of the reason that people were down on CJ Hicks was because when Reese came in the game, he was good. And the difference is with Reese is he looks like a linebacker. He has the instincts you expect from a linebacker, and then he comes at you with very bad intentions. And I think both you and I said this in the roundtable last week was name your surprise player of the year, and I think we both picked Reese. And honestly, the kid looks like he reminds me of Darren Lee when Darren Lee hit the scene, and you're like, oh wow, look at that guy. Where'd that come from? Holy cow! Right? Maybe he's a little bigger recruit than Lee was, but like when he popped, and nothing against Styles and Hicks, who were fine. There was nothing wrong with the game they played. It just Reese came in and looked like a difference maker to me, man. And even when everybody's healthy, when Cody Simon gets back, it's going to be really hard to keep him off the field because he looks like the guy at will, just based on the way he naturally flows to the football. And that's not something you can really teach very easily.
Yeah, you mentioned Cody Simon. We had a chance to talk with Ryan Day, of course, yesterday about that. And he gave it what I thought was a positive update, but not a surprise because we had basically heard those guys probably could have played. Donovan Jackson as well. Donovan Jackson and Cody Simon probably could have played against Akron. It's like for a multitude of reasons, you don't want to like mess with it. Long season. Those guys are veterans. You're playing Akron. You can't beat Akron with some backups. You got a big problem. But he said they're day to day. Said they had a good weekend, and he basically said there's a chance they're going to play this week. I won't be surprised if he holds them out, especially with the bye next week. That would buy them a couple extra weeks. But sounds like it's very minor with both Donnie Jackson and Cody Simon.
And that was my read on it. The second I heard that it was minor stuff, I'm like, oh, they're waiting till Michigan State to play them. They're just making sure they're fully healthy. Because, when you have an early bye week like this, there's no reason to really rush these guys into it. It's a long season. You're hoping it's a really long season. So, let's put it this way. Jackson and Simon are not losing anything by sitting out against Western Michigan. I know one of the folks who popped up on the bottom of the Chiron here was saying, we got to be worried about Western Michigan. They were leading Wisconsin in the fourth quarter. And while I agree Western Michigan is an improved football team, Ohio State is not Wisconsin. So we better not let this team hang around either. I expect this to be another one-sided game.
I got on our Badger 247 board, and they're not calling for Luke's head. They're a pretty reasonable fan base. They really are. They're not happy, though, with Luke.
No.
One game into his second year. Now, I did remind them, I'm like, hey, he was 4-8 his first year at UC. 4-8. And then his record after that was just pristine for the next 5 years. UC's never going to see a 5-year run like that again, including they made a trip to what will be referred to as the college football playoff semifinals, and when only 4 teams made it. But they're not really happy with Luke. So you make a good point. Yeah, Western Michigan is a step up from Akron. Phil Steele had them, I think, picked like 4th in the MAC, whereas he had Akron like as one of the worst teams. But they're Western Michigan, Ohio State's, and now Ohio State's motivated. I love that. They have everybody. They win by 46, and everybody's like, "What's wrong with the Buckeyes?" It's like,
yeah.
Ryan Day came into the press conference yesterday completely serious. Like, I love that. Love that. You mentioned Donovan Jackson and Cody Simon. All right, I want to get your thoughts before we move on to other good stuff like Kenyatta Jackson looking good. Ooh. What's your concern level with this offensive line?
I would say on a scale of 1 being this is the 2014 national championship line and 10 being red alert, we're playing Missouri again. I'm probably around a 5 right now. I think we saw some good things from Tegra, which was important. I thought Fryer's foot speed still really doesn't look great. He was okay. Simmons was fine. McLaughlin was fine. Arvell, looks like a guy who's going to be better in the future. It was nice to see him get some run. But we definitely missed Donovan Jackson. you know, I didn't like the first half where they didn't really get a lot of push. They got better in the second half, but we need to see continued improvement. And I said this in the bucket of bullets. I would very much like to see them with 200 something rush yards this week. This is a week where that O line needs to start moving some heads, and hopefully the Buckeyes could do that here. But uh, I'm probably around a 4 or 5 right now, saying, let's see here. I'm not thrilled what I'm seeing, but it's the first week, so we should never overreact to a first week win by 46.
I'm with you 100%. Like I wanted to see more. I was disappointed, but I'm not sounding alarms by any means. I still think this line is going to be good, and they were very, very vanilla. Dan and I talked about this on Monday.
Yes.
Ohio State was very vanilla.
Very important to put out there because there's no reason for them to do anything more than some basic stuff against Akron. They're not going to show new stuff on film with Chip Kelly as the new play caller. You don't want to give tendencies to teams that actually it matters against. And you have 2 teams, and I bet you they're like this as long as they can be, because Iowa with that defense and then Oregon are the 2 that they really need to have that, stuff in their pocket for. And that's in early October. So that's a really important point right there.
That stretch is going to be very, very interesting with Iowa, Oregon, Penn State. And we're going to talk about all of those teams in a little bit. Yeah, I'm with you on the O-line. Well, I just – this week it needs to be one of those things where even if they're vanilla, they just need to push Western Michigan around. They just need to. And yeah, we can sit here and say, Western Michigan's supposed to be one of the best teams in the MAC. That's fine. Ohio State's supposed to be one of the best teams, if not the best team in the nation. They need to get out there and even if the offensive line's telling Western Michigan, we are running at you this play, they still need to push them off the ball. There's no doubt about it. Kenyatta Jackson's looking good. Man, they're deep at D end, man. You got Caden Curry looks good. Mitchell
I love Caden Curry.
Kenyatta Jackson's one guy in the spring that I think they wanted to see more out of, and whatever they did, they motivated Kenyatta Jackson. 97's out there looking good to me.
Yeah, he made a couple plays, and I was like, ooh, 97, who's that? Oh, gosh, it's Jackson. Great. He had one play where I think Mitchell Melton actually got credit for the sack, but Jackson was the entire driving force behind the play going right into the arms of Melton. That was really good to see. And I've been a big Cade Curry fan since the moment I saw him covering kicks, and I'm like, oh, I like this guy. DN covering kicks like it's his hair on fire. It's amazing. I thought Kenyatta Jackson showed some flashes. I think he's probably your classic a year away guy. Like he'll show at moments and when he gets in, but I think next year is going to be a year he needs to be a frontline guy. And seeing some of that flash is a really good thing for the down the line plan, if you will. And another D lineman I want to put it out there that I thought had a nice game when he got in there was Hero Canoe. He made a couple really nice plays, just totally turning the point of attack where he was at. There was 1 or 2 times there was a running play in his direction. He just blew it up. So I think it's another guy we have to talk about. It was a really good depth piece right now because we have some very big name starters on this D line right now. There's a good second group, or even really parts of a good third group already. It's a very, very deep D line.
Good call on Hero Canoe. He did play well. Good call. Brandon Ennis, we have a punt returner, my friend. 15 yards per punt return, 4 punt returns, 15 yards a pop on average. Had that one where it's like, no, yes. And even Ryan Day said they like that he did that. They don't want the ball rolling all the way down to the 1. I thought that was probably going to roll into the end zone for a touchback, which was why I was like, no, because I thought that was clearly going to be a touchback. But Ryan Day does say they don't want to risk the ball like being like down to the 2 or the 1. And I tell you what, Brandon Ennis he goes north-south. He's got some wiggle. He's tough. He got good hands. I love everything about this backs.
So a good punt returner is a coin, and one side of it is excellence and the other side is insanity, right? And it seems like he's balanced it really well so far in game 1. Now, I don't want to get ahead of myself here because I am intrinsically conservative when it comes to punt returns. But Bucknutters have heard me for almost 15 years now screaming to high heaven, just fair catch it because I know our offense is good and I'm afraid of the turnover. But if Ennis can show his hands are good enough to not turn that ball over, I am here for this. And I think the other thing is that I fit right into that era of Buckeye fan that's automatically suspicious of every punt returner not named Ted Ginn Jr. because it just will never get that good again. But seeing Ennis returning those kicks was very exciting. There's almost nothing more fun in a football game than a really good punt return because everybody doesn't expect much on it. And then all of a sudden it's like, ooh, something exciting's happening. It's like your classic low crescendo to noise, right? And Ennis did a really good job. And I also want to point something else out here, Dave. In one game, we had almost half the total punt return yards we had the entire season last year with Ennis back there and with the different coaching for that unit. So that's something to keep an eye on. I kind of brushed off Ryan Day's comment about, oh yeah, we'll get a kick return this year. I'm like, that sounds like something nice to say before the season. And then after the game, I was like, I think he's right.
Yeah.
So my expectation level for that unit was very low, and now I'm like, I'm gonna actually have to pay attention instead of running to use the bathroom when there's a punt coming from our defense.
I love it because I love it just because he is a good punt returner, Brandon Ennis. But I also feel good for the young man because he's definitely good enough to start right now as a sophomore. But he's got 3 studs ahead of him. He's right there as the number 4 receiver. He's still going to play a lot of wideout this year for the Buckeyes, and he's one injury away from being a starter. But I love that he's got that role as the starting punt returner as well as being the number 4 wide receiver. Okay, but before we move on to going around the Big Ten and looking at that, I want to get your thoughts on Chip Kelly coaching from the box. I love that. He said it's the first time he's done that since in 16 years, 2008. I asked him yesterday, when's the last time you did that? He said 2008 is the last time I coached from the box. And again, he joked, he wished he had the zip line where he could do both, but he does feel like overall it's better to coach from the box. I love that, Bax.
So do you know who his quarterback was in 2008?
Was it Dennis Dixon?
Dennis Dixon,
yes.
Who was the first electric Oregon QB that I remember. Because if you remember, like when they first started that fits and starts of turning into what they are today, it was like Joey Harrington, and like they weren't super inspiring. And then Dennis Dixon was the one that sort of like jump started the Chip Kelly era whenever he took over from the coordinator role into the head coach role. And I think it's a good thing because I like Chip Kelly up in the box. I'm a big believer offensive coordinators also need to be able to see the field. How are you going to call a scheme if you can't tell what the defense is doing at eye level as easily? And the blunt truth is nobody can see it as well at eye level as they can the eyes in the sky. There's a reason every quarterback who's ever been worth anything in the NFL has the iPad. They're immediately looking at the coverage going, what did I miss, right? It's just better to call it from up there. And I'm glad he's up there because it's going to allow him to see some things too. And particularly for Chip, I think one of the most important aspects is going to be to watch the blocking and how the run game and all the different wrinkles that he throws in on. He tried a couple different pins in the game that I actually thought worked really well. There were a couple big plays sprung by Travion. I'm interested to see what other wrinkles are in this running game because that should be Chip Kelly's real gigantic contribution to this offense because Ryan Day's passing schemes are still going to be a big factor. But Chip is well known as one of the best run game coordinators with everything that he's done in his career. I'm excited to have him up top seeing it. I think it's only going to make him better.
All right, Bax and I are going to go around the Big Ten in just a moment. How's the conference look this year, the new look conference? We're going to go around the Big Ten in just a moment. Before we do that, I want to let you know about Bax's favorite app, Babbel. 1 in 5 Americans have learn a new language on their bucket list. If that's you, make this year the year you finally check that off the list with Babbel. Fast forward to the end of this football season. Buckeyes are going to win the national championship. Goals outside of that. What can you do right now to give yourself the best chance of succeeding? If you want to learn a new language, you absolutely should get Babbel. Here's a special limited time deal for our listeners. Right now, get up to 60% off your Babbel subscription, but only for our listeners at babbel.com/bucknuts. Again, get 60% off at babbel.com/bucknuts. That's spelled BABBEL.com/bucknuts. Rules and restrictions may apply. Bax is fluent in French now because of Babbel. Aren't you fluent in something else too? Aren't you fluent in like German as well?
I've actually been practicing my German because I don't get the opportunity to speak it as very often right now. My oldest son's just learning it right now in school, but I don't get the opportunity to converse with people in German very often. So I've been utilizing the Babbel app. I immediately jumped into the advanced module that they have. And it's been good for me to remember some of my dative and passive and other tenses that German has that we do not have in English. German also has at least 8 ways to say the word the. So I constantly mix them up. I actually wasn't any good at that when I lived there either. But it's been really good for me to work on a lot of the things in German and hear the language because I haven't heard it enough since I've lived back in the United States. So it's been really good for me just to keep that language fresh in my head as well.
8 different ways to say the Ohio State University.
Der, die, das, dem, den is that's yeah.
That's crazy.
And actually, there's only certain ways that are correct to say it. So it'd be like the Ohio State, and we're like, well, you add university. Because, people are like the Ohio State. No, it's the Ohio State University, guys. Don't say the Ohio State. You got to add the in university. But
I know that's been butchered over the years. People are saying
the Ohio State. Them kids aren't in school yet, man. They haven't been up to O State yet. They don't know how that goes. They just say the Ohio State. No, it's the Ohio State University. TOSU, not TOS.
A lot of people now just go the, which is pretty funny.
That correct.
The.
We tried trademarking the word, so.
What's funny is other fan bases think that Ohio State fans refer to Ohio State like in written as TOSU. I'm like, nobody does that.
No.
I don't know one Ohio State fan who refers to Ohio State as TO in written form. Yeah, we like to joke, the Ohio State University. Not really joke, but like
we're just OSU.
That's right, we're OSU. Yeah, if we're texting each other, it's just Bax, you going to the TOSU game this week? But if you hear other fan bases, they think that that's what Ohio State fans do. It's funny.
It's one of those things I think when you're outside, like people like South Carolina calls themselves SC, but we all call them SC East. So you know what I mean?
Yeah, like I just call them South Carolina. Yeah.
And I don't know anybody unless you're in Oregon or Oklahoma. If you say OSU, thinks Oregon State or Oklahoma State. Just be honest here.
Right.
Like, this is the Ohio State University, and it's also the OSU whenever anybody puts it as an acronym. No offense to those other programs that are very lovely and orange and black, both of them.
Yeah, I mean, South Carolina, I don't fault their fans for calling them SC, but no one outside of South Carolina fans refers to them as SC. SC is USC, and South Carolina is South Carolina.
Yeah, or cocky, or whatever you want to call it, right?
The Cox.
The Cox. I was the age where the white hat that just said Cox on it.
Oh, yeah. I remember everybody had that. I was too. When I went, I remember being at Ohio State, and there'd be dudes walking around like with the Cox hat, like that was like in style.
South Carolina and
more at Ohio State wearing South Carolina hats.
OSU fraternities, man.
Yes, that's exactly what it was. Frat boys at Ohio State wearing the Cox hat. That was like
Cox and Morehead State. Those are the two.
Yeah, true. All right, Texas, Michigan. Oh, baby, high noon. So bet the farm on the Longhorns, huh?
This is Michigan. This is Texas. That's what's gonna happen. Holy cow! Michigan was worse than I thought they would be. There was at one point when it was 16-10 in the fourth quarter. They showed Sharon Moore on the sideline, and it was like he was looking for Connor Stallions. Like, hey, where's the guy who tells me what's gonna happen? Like, it was hilarious. They were so bad. They got no push on the offensive line. Like, I had a bunch of Michigan fans trolling me, like, first half of the Ohio State game, like, well, running the football is a culture. And I'm like, all right, hey, guys, apparently running the football is a culture because you aren't doing it either. The reality, too, is that if Fresno State's quarterback could hit a pass under pressure and not throw high, they might have won that football game. Now, Fresno State had a decent D-line. They got a lot of pressure in. Michigan did not get great quarterback play. Donovan Edwards was frankly not good. The Nick Mullings is a much better running back, but like Origi can't do anything but run the ball, and I don't think he's super dynamic. He kind of reminds me of Joe Milton. And then that walk-on they had, I was like, wait, who is this guy? And he played like a walk-on. No offense to it, but that's what he looked like. Nick Sheridan. For those of you with a long memory of bad Michigan quarterbacks. Mm-hmm. And the truth of the matter is their offensive line really wasn't very good either. And one thing that got on my nerves, they all still have helmet stickers from last year. Like, guys, move on. Like, half those guys still had like 20 helmet stickers in the back of their helmets. And I'm like, guys, you're living in the past at this point. And it was like, apparently their career helmet stickers up there. And I'm like, well, that's going to go great for you guys this year if you keep talking about the national championship that you cheated your way to last year, because all those guys are gone, except for a bunch of backups now. But looking at that Michigan team, man, I was not impressed at all.
I was not impressed at all either. I was very entertained that it was a one-score game in the fourth quarter. Michigan did pull away late, but like still, I mean, they looked awful. I
But
mean,
why did they pull away? They had won their only real drive of the game for a touchdown. I'll give them credit for that, because their first touchdown was on a bad interception that the QB threw high, hit the fingertips of a receiver, and was picked off, right? Again, if that Fresno quarterback had any composure, was able to keep the ball down, they would have won that game. But after that, they kicked a couple 50 and something and 40 something yard field goals, and then they got one good drive and a pick six. That's how they scored. And the reality is, that offense wasn't very good. And the pick six that they had was like an ultimate, like, stare the guy down, through the really slow out pass that you've already thrown twice and nearly gotten. Quinn Ewers in Texas might score 45 points on them. I mean, that was
our guy Quinn Ewers, calling them the team up north.
That's right. Let's go,
guy.
Quinn. You know what? We gave you your year of tutelage and NIL money. Do this for us. Please beat them. All right.
Yeah.
I mean, no, Dave, I had cooked this into my preseason prediction. I don't know about you. I had Michigan at 8-4 anyways. I had them losing their 3 big games, and I had them losing to Texas. But after watching that Fresno State game, I'm kind of wondering, like, what other surprises lie in the weeds for a Michigan team that they just don't even with all the player changes, they just didn't seem to have that same nasty. And I don't know if that's a byproduct of just not knowing what's coming like they have the last couple years, and that just made them look like more confident and assertive and swaggery. But they did not. They looked a lot like the 2018 Michigan, 2019 Michigan teams you see, where it's like they're fine. They're going to win 8 games. It was very different watching them. The entirely different vibe around that Michigan program. And I mean, I think Texas is going to put the woodshed on them. If I was a gambling man, I would be looking for alternate spreads larger than whatever's out there right now.
We got some of the people I love this in the chat saying they hope Quinn Ewers hits the OH after he scores. That would be hilarious.
Quinn Ewers would
hilarious. You can do the hook 'em and then do the OH. You know, don't disrespect your team. Don't get in trouble with your guys. Do the hook 'em and then hit the OH. And don't hit the gritty. Don't hit the gritty.
I also think it being at noon is a big deal, Dave. If this was a night game and Michigan had a chance to try to get their crowd revved up a little bit, I would think that maybe there'd be a little bit more interest to it. But I'm sitting here like at noon. Texas blew the doors off of Colorado State. I know Colorado State's not great, but Texas came out and looked the part. And I think that they're going to have a pretty successful afternoon in Ann Arbor. Like, you know what popped into my head watching that game was that time Oregon went up against Rich Rodriguez and it was like 38-7. That was the vibe I got watching that game this past week. Like, oh man, Texas might kill them.
That offensive coordinator for Oregon was pretty good, Chip Kelly.
Yeah, I think he knew what he was doing.
Yeah, up in the press box there, which is where he's at now. I love it. By the way, good morning to Mrs. Sanchez, early there in Texas. Good morning, D. Miss Dietra. Penn State looks better than what I thought. I thought that was going to be a tough game for them, and they went in there and just smoked West Virginia. Now, maybe West Virginia is just not good, but we'll find out. But Penn State looks good, man. They look good on both sides of the ball.
Penn State did that exact same thing to WVU last year, too. It was very similar scores, like 30-15 or something last year. I think Penn State's really good. I've said this about Penn State for years. I don't really question the talent, except for when they had Sean Clifford start at quarterback for 4 years, which was a gift for Ohio State. I think Penn State's got a ton of talent. I think Drew Aller is going to be a good quarterback for them. I mean, he made some nice passes in that game. He kind of blew the game open right after the weather delay with a long touchdown pass. Yeah. They certainly have some talent at Penn State. The issue with Penn State, in my opinion, has never been talent. The issue with Penn State is that James Franklin in big games doesn't have that willpower, that gut strength, that whatever you call it, that winners do. The only time he ever was beaten Ohio State was when OSU tried kicking that long field goal 10 years ago almost now. And I said this watching Florida State and Boston College last night. I said the biggest gift we've ever gotten was that Bill O'Brien left before sanctions got lifted at Penn State, because Penn State is legitimately a program that has everything there to compete at the level Ohio State does, except a head coach who can't win the big game. I literally think Penn State's going to go 11-1 this year, lose to Ohio State, and make a playoff game. That's how I see them. They were, to me, the Penn State is the biggest beneficiary of the playoff going to 12 of any team in the country.
Right. Right now they have
I mean,
a little buffer. They might not even need it they'll need it because I think they're going to lose to Ohio State, but
yeah, I don't think they make the Big Ten
they're
championship.
in. Go ahead.
They are always the team that doesn't make the Big Ten title game, but only loses like 1 or 2 games. They would be they're a perennial playoff team going forward. Everyone, that's my view on Penn State. They don't need to beat OSU anymore to make the playoffs. And I think Ohio State's better than them this year. I do. But they're a good football team. There's a ton of NFL players on that team. They have a lot of talent on both sides of the football. I just don't think James Franklin has it in him to beat Ohio State. Until I see it, I'm not going to believe it.
He did a good job with his offensive coordinator hire, getting that guy from Kansas. That was a good hire. We know Tom Allen was a good hire as defensive coordinator. That's not a surprise. He might be a little off his rocker. The man can coach some defense, Tom Allen. So, but I think their offensive coordinator that they poached from Kansas, that was a good hire. But you're right. James Franklin just has not shown that he can win the big game. All right, we'll get you out of here on this. Oregon, everybody touting Oregon looking great. They looked shaky against a FCS foe, Idaho. Idaho used to be FCS. Then they moved up to D1. Now they're back to FCS. I guess it's been like 8 years they've been back in FCS. I thought that just happened a couple years ago. Apparently that happened like 8 years ago. Time flies when you're having fun, Bax. But Oregon not looking that good. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, first of all, a buddy of mine named Denny, his nephew is the starting quarterback on Idaho. So I was getting a lot of very excited text messages when Jack Lane got into the end zone. He is an Oregon kid. He grew up in Portland, Oregon, and went to Idaho. He's a sophomore starting a quarterback for them. So that was a really cool experience just because he was so giddy that they were even keeping it close. It was a weird game, though. Like, if you look at that, they got stopped on like 4th and 1 a couple times. Dylan Gabriel casually threw for like 400 yards. Like, it was a weird football game. And again, you can't take too much out of the first week. If they have trouble with Boise State this week on Friday night, which Pac-10 after dark, baby. Big 10 after dark, baby. Yeah, right. It's weird saying Big 10 after dark, but that's what it is. The reality is, if they struggle this week, then maybe Oregon is crumbling under the hype. Every year there's a couple teams in the top 10 that end up unranked, and I thought it would just be Florida State and Michigan this year, but Oregon week 1 was not excellent, to say the least. And in fact, I would argue that Oregon, we all came into this year thinking Oregon was the West Coast team in the Big Ten. USC looked night and day from last year. If that's their defense this year, they're going to be a pain in the neck. That's the reality. That's a good football team that we saw beat LSU with that defensive line, with the quarterback that could throw the ball. That one receiver made 2 unbelievable catches. So, the Big Ten got interesting. Iowa quietly went out and scored 40 points. And for everybody who's shrugging off Iowa scoring 40 points on anyone, you've not been watching Iowa football for the last decade. Iowa still has an excellent defense. They're a team that I think was going to win 10 games this year. If their offense is any better, that's going to be a threat of a team too. So the Oregon struggles combined with USC being better than I thought, Iowa kind of doing what I sort of expected, but maybe even being a little better offensively than I thought. There's a good top of the Big Ten this year. There really is. And there's a middle group that I think will be sneaky interesting to watch between, you have Nebraska that Dylan Raiola came out and did well. Rutgers had a big win to start the year. They're probably, with their schedule, they look like they could have a real run on things. Washington at least got their act together with all their new guys. They're kind of a wild card. Really the only Big Ten team the whole first week, other than Michigan, that kind of didn't look very good, were Michigan State, who kind of trudged out a win over Florida Atlantic, which they barely got to, and then Minnesota, who blew it to UNC by missing some field goals. Otherwise, I thought the rest of the Big Ten, they showed a little bit of something this week, and I think I hate to say this, I know the SEC gets all the hype, but I think the Big Ten might be every bit as good, if not better, than the SEC this year.
Big Ten does look strong. I concur. Great stuff as always from Matt Baxendell. Appreciate it, Bax. You can catch his column every Sunday on Bucknuts. It is the bucket of bullets. It's must-read material. Thanks to Bax. Thanks to all of you. Hope everyone has a great rest of your day.